let's go back. What I'm really interested in is like what made Dan Bilzerian Dan Bilzerian. So when you were younger, like you were in, junior high school, you weren't the most popular kid in school. You weren't the quarterback of the football team. So was it like sort of you loved hot chicks always like I did, and you wanted to fuck hot chicks, and like it was always about what's the path towards that? Like was that your driving force? Like you look at Dynasty and you see Dallas and you see how they're living and the hot women, like that's the life I want.
Yeah, for me, it was my next door neighbor, this guy, Ernie Hare, and he had the hot chicks and he had the smaller house, but he had the Ferrari. He had all this shit that I cared about, that my parents were the polar opposites. They had the huge house, they had the jet, but they didn't have the cool cars, they didn't have the cool clothes, the nice watches, like all the shit that I cared about, obviously like the hot chicks, whatever. And so he was kind of one of those people that just like had all the shit that I wanted. And I was always the type of guy that I would figure out what I wanted and then figure out how I could set up my life to get there. Like I got more into that as time went on, but even when I was younger, if I saw something that I wanted, I would try and figure out like what I could do to get that. And, and girls was the first thing that was like really kind of on the radar. So
was that like at what age? Was it like junior high school when you started realizing I just want to have the hottest chicks, and you're seeing her on TV or your next door neighbor, and that was that the driving force?
I think probably like middle school or junior high. Like I don't know, like hot chicks weren't really into me, and it was kind of one of those things that I wanted but I couldn't have. And my neighbor had it. It was like, I don't know. It was just that to me was success. It's like I think a lot of the reason that a lot of guys want to make a lot of money is because they want to get a lot of pussy. They just don't want to say it.
Did you have any like attempts at success before the whole thing took off? Like with you actually made your real big money gambling, right? That was the money that you made.
Yeah, and I made
not
it early.
From your parents, by the way. Right? So you got money, but later on, right? Is that the story?
And here's the thing: I wouldn't have given a shit. I would have been totally happy just getting a bunch of money from my parents, and I was never the guy that like.
So wanted
praise. I never wanted praise for doing it the hard way or any of that shit. I didn't give a fuck. Like honestly, the bulk of my career, I leaned on the whole trust fund thing and just, had everybody thinking that I was a trust fund idiot and whatever. And if people still want to believe that, I really don't give a fuck, honestly. My thing was, I made my money playing poker. My trust fund didn't kick in until I was 35, and I didn't even cash it until I was 39. So it was one of those things that, I had it there, but it wasn't a crazy amount of money. It wasn't life-changing. I mean, look, I said it in the book, I was flipping quarters for more money than my trust fund, years before I got it. So it was one of those things where, I bought my jet 3 years before I got my trust fund, all that stuff. So for me, I don't really care if people believe it or not, but that's the story. It is what it is. I made the money playing poker, and I made a lot of it. And I didn't make it because I was the best poker player. I made it because I got into the fucking best games, which is a part of poker that a lot of poker players don't really fucking like understand. It's not like Major League Baseball where like you have to fucking win the World Series to win. It's like, no, the scoreboard is your fucking bank account, and how you fill that motherfucker is, up for interpretation. Like you could go win tournaments, you could go play fucking rich idiots, you could go grind online. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I chose the most effective, because for me it was like, okay,
playing rich idiots seems like the best way.
Yeah, how can I make the most amount of money in the shortest period of time possible? And that's what I did.
Right, and that would be playing against rich idiots, basically.
100%, and I don't know why nobody else could see that. I mean, I guess it wasn't
pretty obvious.
Yeah, like they had to get into the game, so I guess that was like the barrier to entry, And so for me, I leaned on the trust fund thing, and that was what got me entry. And that plus, I played like a pretty crazy style. But there's a part of it where I had to lose some money sometimes to make money. I had to like give a little bit more action than was technically correct. And a lot of these nitty guys, these like really tight pros, they would never do that. They would never make a mistake, even though later it would yield them way more fucking money. They would. They just. I don't know, man. They were like,
you were essentially, you were managing a brand. So I think what you hit on was the power of celebrity and having a brand to get you into the right table. So it's not just like what table, it's who's at the table, right? So it's this intersection of wealth, not being great at the game, and then someone like you who's rich and famous and celebrity, they want you there. So it gives you access to the games you want to get into. Is that basically the secret?
That's pretty close, man. That's actually an interesting point of like, you're right. It is kind of like building a fucking brand, because you build that brand, and then that's what, now you're the fucking rich trust fund guy. It's like, you got to figure out like what's going to get you in these games. And so I guess for me, I was like kind of building a brand before I even knew I was building a brand.
Exactly.
And I got into these games. And I got rich before I got famous. I used the money to get famous. And the fame, for me, the primary driver for the fame was just to get more pussy with less effort. And I saw the power of it, when I was around celebrities, and I saw how people reacted to it. And I knew, I just knew it was a very powerful thing. And it was something that, there's a lot of rich guys that really wanted it, and there wasn't really a price tag on it. So it was, something that almost transcended money. And like you said, yeah, it also offered me the benefits of, then getting into even better games and, more people knowing who I was. And so it was, it was one of those things where I climbed the wealth mountain, and then I wanted to see if I could, do the fame thing as well.